Happy New Year. Good to have you with us on this Monday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. This production brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. 2016 is going to be a great year for the Ed Schultz team. We are moving to Washington, D.C. This production will take place on Wednesday for the rest of the year, in Washington, D.C., starting on Wednesday. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. There'll be an announcement about my future career plans coming up here in the next week or so. So I had to take a few days off, maybe a couple of weeks to add it up over the holidays to think about a few things, to get a breather. It's been a very interesting year, 2015. On the political front, it's really been an amazing year. If you go back to 1 year ago this day, early January 2015, and if you had said that Bernie Sanders was going to raise $73 million from 2.5 million people, you would have said no. I would have said no way. It is amazing. And it's really a lesson, as we never know what's going to happen in the political arena. We never know how attitudes are going to change or how emotions are going to be struck by people who want to make things happen in our system. And now Hillary Clinton, who was expected to just breeze through all of this, has got some very serious competition. She's outraising Bernie Sanders, but not with more people. And if the people show up, what happens in Iowa? What happens in New Hampshire? If Bernie Sanders wins the first two contests, is that truly a game changer? Will his fundraising even increase even more? What is it about this man from Vermont, the independent, who has caucused with the Democrats for years? What passion has he struck in the hearts of Americans and the minds of Americans that he truly is the change that we need? This is Sanders over the weekend.
I think that people are tired of establishment politics and establishment economics. And they are also tired of a corrupt campaign finance system and super PACs that allows billionaires to purchase elections. That's not what the American people want. And one of the manifestations of that is the kind of incredible fundraising that we've been doing in terms of small individual donations. We have 2.5 million small individual contributions to our campaign. That is more than any campaign in the history of the United States of America. And I think that speaks to the enthusiasm and support that we're getting at the grassroots.
And no one can argue with that. There's no question about it. The numbers are what they are as we are here in early January 2016. But what are the numbers going to be when it comes to turnouts, when it comes to caucusing in Iowa? And if Bernie doesn't show well in Iowa, where does that leave his campaign? For more on this, let's go to Katrina vanden Heuvel, editor, part owner of the Nation magazine. Katrina, great to have you with us.
Happy New Year, Ed. And I just want to say we were honored at the Nation in our 2015 Progressive Honor Roll to count your podcast as the most valuable because of your powerful, pointed advocacy for working people in this country, for a progressive populist politics, which to segue naturally into is something, we're seeing Bernie Sanders is speaking for working people who have been told for too long that they're on the wrong side of history. He's speaking with integrity, with honesty about the challenges this country faces. He's telling people truths. And he's saying, take back your country from the billionaires. And I think what's happened, Ed, it is extraordinary if you look back a year. February 2014, the Nation launched something we called Project 45, and it was a commitment that this election would not be hijacked by high-powered strategists, well-heeled donors, and big media outlets more interested in cash than in a clash of ideas, which Bernie Sanders committed himself to by entering this race. Mm-hmm. And who knew? Let's take ourselves back then, as you said, Ed. It was going to be a coronation. So I think we're witnessing whatever happens. Can Bernie win? We could talk long and hard about it. But I think on some level, Bernie Sanders has already won. He has elevated issues that might not otherwise have been in this campaign: inequality, climate change, Medicare for all. These are issues he has worked his life for, and I think it's a moment to understand our system is so corroded, but that there's a vitality that is possible if people come forward, as Bernie Sanders likes to talk about, and try for, I might say, people-powered politics. He talks about a political revolution, but actually people seeing that change is possible is the beginning, however hardwired our system is against change.
Katrina, I'm honored that The Nation magazine thinks so much of my work, and I appreciate it very much. What a way to start 2016, as we've got some more exciting things on the horizon for the Ed team, and I appreciate it very much.
Great.
You know, the thing that's going to be interesting to watch about the Bernie campaign is that, okay, they've got these numbers, they've got these donors. Are they people that just want to see change, or are they people that want to work for change?
Yep.
Are these folks going to really come out with heart and soul and determination in Iowa? And that's the first test.
Absolutely, Ed. I mean, first of all, let's also take a measure of the corporate media, which has for too long, as I like to say, policed the parameters of the possible in our politics, and it leads to a downsized politics of excluded alternatives. Millions of people met Bernie Sanders, and more important in some ways, met issues that he has lifted up, progressive populist issues that have not been given the attention they deserve in our corporate media. And he's done well despite, until recently, corporate media that wasn't very interested in him. Your listeners have probably seen the stats. I mean, he beats Trump in many of these polls, but Trump, got, according to the Tyndall report, a well-respected media report, he got 243 hours compared to 10 hours given to Bernie Sanders. That's a scandal. That shows how what Bernie Sanders has spoken of for a long time, how our corporate media is not doing this country, our democracy, a service. The debates. I understand Robert Reich has petitioned through Democracy for America, has petitioned the DNC to hold more debates. The next debate, Ed, I think it's a Sunday night. Am I crazy? It's a 3-day holiday weekend. There are football games up against it. I mean, this is not doing our country, people who care, a service. I do think it is a big question. We had a big story in one of the last issues of The Nation called A Renewal in Iowa, and it's all about, working-class voters turn out. Will they be drawn to Bernie Sanders' message? Or, to be honest, Trump's right-wing populism? I mean, there is a struggle underway. I think Bernie Sanders voters understand he's a serious candidate with serious solutions. He's not a fearmonger. I think there's far more hope, reality to the fact that thousands will get out there and work hard for him in caucuses, in the 1,600-plus, I think, precinct caucuses in Iowa, moving into New Hampshire.
Katrina, I just want to close with you by saying that a testimony about Bernie Sanders. You know that when I was doing cable, Bernie was on my show all the time. Mm-hmm. And you know that Bernie and I have been friends and allies for a long time in the fight for, health care and the fight for public education, equal rights, women's rights, worker rights, everything across the board. And now I'm associated with a super PAC, Americans for a Strong Middle Class. Bernie Sanders will not take my phone call. I mean, this is a man.
No, he's a rock-ribbed integrity. He's staying true. I think part of what you opened the show with, Ed, which is news of this last weekend, is the amount of money Bernie Sanders has raised. Yeah. But his campaign strategy is true to his commitment. He's funded his campaign with small donations, and he's not setting up these, quote, independent big money super PACs. All power to him. The integrity stands in stark contrast to many in our system. But
refreshing.
The big thing is we need, and I hope your good listeners' eyes won't glaze over it before 9:30 a.m. But we desperately need, small donor public financing to empower millions of people's voices in this country, so they too, at different levels, can run like a Bernie Sanders. Because there are people out there with integrity who are turned off and tuned out. Good to have you with us, Katrina. Always a pleasure. You bet. Thank you so much. Bernie Sanders, at a town hall meeting in Iowa, says this about the outcome. Let me tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. I don't want to get Secretary Clinton nervous. I think we're going to win here in Iowa. And what is happening to Bush? Bush has been nothing but a torpedo on Donald Trump, and now he's saying that Trump has no chance. Donald Trump, I don't believe, is going to be the party's nominee. And if he is, he's going to get crushed by Hillary Clinton. And I wanted to point that out. He's said some things that are just outrageous. His views on policy have shifted with the winds. He is a strong supporter until recently of Hillary Clinton, and now he's the front-running candidate for the Republican nomination. Someone has to call him out. Well, I'll tell you what, Trump has called out all of the Republicans, and now he's focused on Hillary Clinton. The gender card being played by the Clinton campaign, this is the reaction from Trump.
There was certainly a lot of abuse of women, and you look at whether it's Monica Lewinsky or Paula Jones or many of them, and that certainly will be fair game. Certainly if they play the woman's card with respect to me, that will be fair game.
Are you saying an extramarital affair by Bill Clinton is fair game and something that you think should be in the campaign?
What I'm saying is very simple. If she is going to play the woman card, because I'll do more for women than Hillary Clinton is going to do for women, including the safety of our country, which is good for everybody. But if she's going to play, which she started about a week ago, talking about, he mentioned, and, the whole thing, playing up the women's card very, very strongly. And if she's going to play that game, and if he's going to be out there campaigning, then he's certainly fair game. And I think just about everybody agrees with me on that.
I think voters need to think about this. All's fair in love, war, and politics. Maybe not. Bernie Sanders doesn't think that anybody should go down this road. But, not to indict the former president, but if there are some issues that arise after Hillary Clinton is president of the United States, what would the media focus on? What would the country focus on? What would the Congress focus on? Would we be able to get anything done? Would a spouse become a huge distraction to the process of what this country is facing and what needs to be done? I think it's a legitimate question, and I think it needs to be considered by voters. This is Bernie Sanders' reaction to the whole thing.
Donald Trump and Washington Post columnist Ruth Marcus think Bill Clinton's sexual history is fair game. Do you?
No, I don't. I think, we have enormous problems facing this country, and I think we got more things to worry about than Bill Clinton's sexual life. I think, interestingly enough, maybe Donald Trump might want to focus attention on climate change and understand that climate change is not a hoax as he believes that it is, that maybe Donald Trump should understand that we should raise the minimum wage in this country, which he opposes, and maybe we should not be giving huge tax breaks to fellow billionaires like Donald Trump.
Bernie Sanders unwilling to go into the gutter at any level. When we come back, Jim McDermott, what will the Republicans do in 2016? They're talking about repealing Obamacare. We've heard that before. That's next on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Stay with us. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you back with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. So what is a Ryan-led Congress going to do versus a Boehner-led Congress? What's the difference? Not a whole lot. They're going to go after Obamacare. The president's going to veto it. So we're going down a dead end, but they're trying to make a statement in a political year. For more on this, let's go to Jim McDermott, congressman from Washington, and is a member of the House Budget Committee. Jim, good to have you with us. Hope you had a great new year.
I had a great year, Ed. It was a good time with my family. I was in Sun Valley, and all my family was there. So we had 16 people living in the same house enjoying each other's company.
That's great. That's the kind of rest and relaxation people need. Congressman, what is going to be different between a Ryan effort to repeal Obamacare and what we saw Boehner do?
None. It's simply going to be a continuation of the assault that they have put on Obamacare from the time it was passed, and I don't expect to see any lessening of it until we get to the election. I mean, they are never going to offer the people an alternative. They are simply going to say what the president did was bad, and we're going to get rid of it.
Congressman, I'm going to personalize this. My wife has fought cancer for almost 3 years now. We're well beyond the $1 million coverage, the big mark that everybody was talking about. If Obamacare were to be destroyed by the Republicans, we would be victim, and certainly we would be undoubtedly a candidate to have our insurance dropped. Is that a fact, or is that not a fact?
Well, that is probably the $1 million question, so to speak, because the provisions in there that provide for people's ability to get insurance, even if they have a pre-existing condition, it would be a part of the repeal, perhaps. Now, if they leave that in place, then the insurance companies are stuck with the fact that people can come in anytime they want. As soon as they find out they have a bad diagnosis, they come in and get insurance, and the insurance companies are going to scream to high heaven that that's not fair. So the Republicans are really caught on their own, they're being hoisted on their own petard. They can't take Obamacare out without taking away that pre-existing condition exemption. And secondly, all the people in this country who have their children on to age 26, if that's repealed, that means that many middle-class people will have their kids out there with a job, but no insurance.
Well, but they would also be able to make decisions on patients and just drop them because they cost too much.
Oh yeah, that's the whole idea of underwriting. That is deciding which patients you want and how much to charge them will come back in full force if they repeal this law.
So to your knowledge, the Republicans have not offered anything to counter any of that, have they?
There's been no proposal. We've said it over and over and over on the floor. I mean, we've had 55 attempts to repeal it. So we keep saying, okay, repeal it, but what's your alternative? And they do not have one.
Here's Speaker Ryan talking about the move.
You're going to see us put a bill on the president's desk, going after Obamacare and Planned Parenthood. So we'll finally get a bill on his desk to veto. Then you're going to see the House Republican Conference working with our senators coming out with a bold agenda that we're going to lay out for the country to say how we would do things very differently. And you'll see a return to regular order where men and women in Congress can bring their bills to the floor, make their amendments in order, and we will run Congress the way the founders intended it to be run. We think the country's headed in the wrong direction. We think Obama has transformed us in a bad way. We owe people an alternative, and that's exactly what we're going to lay out.
All right, Congressman, regular order. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means the Republicans want to say that we're going to have a change in the way the place is run, but it clearly is being run totally out of Ryan's office. He makes the decision. He brings out the bill and hands it to his majority leader, Mr. McCarthy, and says, go get this through the House. The old way was ideas would come into committees and they would be discussed, and you'd have hearings and people would come in and talk about them and decide which is the best way to go, and then they would pass through the committee process and up. Now it comes from the Speaker's office to the committee chairman with the instruction, bring that bill back to me so I can pass it on the floor. Don't change anything. You watch, there won't be any amendments in the committees.
Jim McDermott, Congressman from Washington, great to have you with us. We'll do it again. Thank you, sir.
All right. We'll see you again, Ed.
You bet. The Bundy boys are back at it in Oregon. It's a standoff. That story next. Stay with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, Manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, President of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Good to have you back with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. You may remember the story of Cliven Bundy and the battle that he had with the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management, and how the government never really intervened and finished the job. Well, they're back at it. This time the story comes to us from Burns, Oregon, where a group of protesters, armed and threatening, have taken over a national wildlife refuge building because they don't like the way the federal government is operating and trying to get some land that is owned by a group of people that says they don't want to give it up. In an interview with a radio talk show host on the right wing, Ammon Bundy is the son of Cliven Bundy. He's one of the protesters that's up there armed and ready to go in Oregon. He says this about a possible confrontation.
The ranch is adjacent to the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge and to have private property up on the Steen Mountains. They have refused for nearly 40 years to sell their ranch. And there have been very vindictive behaviors because they refuse. There have been intimidations, and the list goes on.
Heidi Byrick, she is the Director of Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Heidi, good to have you with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Thanks for having me.
What is at the heart of this beef? Is it the federal government wanting to acquire some land for a national wildlife project? What is it?
Look, at the heart of this, I would argue, is the fact that the federal government did not rein in the folks who were riled up at the Bundy situation. They were able to basically point firearms at federal agents and other kinds of law enforcement and run them off. And
after they broke the law, that's right. They were never reeled in.
That's exactly right. There were snipers actually pointing weapons at federal officials and Las Vegas PD out there at the Bundy Ranch. Nobody was prosecuted for it. This entire movement was energized and emboldened by that, and we're now seeing the fallout because these are the same folks who were at the Bundy Ranch who are now occupying this building up there in Oregon.
So what is the issue here? Does the landowner not want to sell, being forced to sell? What started this to the point, and how many protesters are we talking about, and how determined? How would you give analysis to this?
Sure. Well, the weird thing that's happening here is there are two men from the Hammond family who are ranchers in that area, and they've already been prosecuted for setting fires on public land. They're going to prison today. They have said they're going to report for prison, and they have actually said they don't want to have anything to do with the group of people who have taken over this, these office buildings at this wildlife refuge. Now, the people at the wildlife refuge are there claiming that the federal government essentially should have no control over any public lands. Really, they don't want public lands, period, in the West. And that's the beef that they have, and they have basically threatened, if they need to use violence to stop the federal government from basically controlling its own property, right? I mean, that's what's at the heart of this dispute.
So the question is, how far will it go? This is Bundy talking to a radio reporter on the scene.
If the federal government decides to use force, will you respond with force as well?
That would have to be determined at that time. I would not be able to report on that.
Are you prepared to?
Absolutely.
Do we have another Waco on our hands, Heidi?
Well, I mean, that's obviously the concern, and these guys have already gotten away with threatening violence, right, one time. So you sort of have to think that they probably would be willing to go there again. I mean, that's what basically Ammon Bundy just said in that clip that you played. So it's a really volatile situation. I'm not exactly sure how many folks are in that building. You know, there have been reports of between like 25 and 60. What we do know is that they're armed. So we've got a bunch of armed people occupying a building saying they hate the federal government and they're willing to use violence if necessary. That's a recipe for disaster.
And the Bundy boys basically are being used as a PR piece. They come from Nevada, now in Oregon. They really have no parochial dog in this fight other than to gather attention nationwide, correct?
That's exactly right. And they have shown up in some other places. There was a battle over a pit mine in Oregon earlier this year that happened. There have been some run-ins in other parts of federal land in Nevada and other places. And so every time there's some kind of flare-up over land use, they're taking advantage of it to publicize it. But this, of course, is going much further by taking over this building.
And the Southern Poverty Law Center views this as what? I mean, is it a neo-Nazi movement? Is it a Confederate movement? Is it an anti-federalist movement? Give us a label here or zero in on definition.
Sure. I mean, these people are all basically members of the anti-government movement. They call themselves patriots. And what those are not like people who want lower taxes, right, conservatives. Yeah. These are people who literally believe the federal government is the enemy and that it should have no jurisdiction whatsoever. And that's why they were willing to pull out weapons against federal agents in the dispute with Bundy. I mean, my God, Bundy owes over $1 million, has been prosecuted in courts in Las Vegas, Cliven Bundy I'm talking about, several times, and he's what's called a sovereign citizen. He denies that the federal government has any power over him whatsoever. And that's really what's at the heart of this, these rabid anti-government beliefs that drive these people to the point of a gun, basically, to try to push their positions.
Heidi Beirich, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Thank you.
You bet. She's the Director of Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. We're back tomorrow.